Hi, Wayne.
Hey, Sam.
How are you?
Good. Very good. Looks like all seems to be working okay.
I hope it stays that way. Wayne, you might want to consider muting your mic.
Just going through things. How's things going?
Hello.
Familiar face.
Hey, Drew.
Hi, Sam. Hi, Wayne.
How are you?
Yeah, good. How's it?
Good. Good.
Okay, phone's on silent. Now I can focus.
Good idea.
So,
Good
Yeah.
point.
how do you want to run this? Is it a conversation or a round robin question Q&A?
Somewhere in between the two, I think. I'm not going to do anything formal like a presentation or anything like that. We're going to sort of go straight into it and a bit of an intro for yourselves. And then there'll be some formal questions, but those are kind of more of a loose guide. I mean, feel free to jump in with questions for the other panelists or for myself, and let's try and keep it more discussion orientated like that.
Perfect.
Okay.
In fact, let me just
Good.
relook at your questions.
see if it's fairly late in the afternoon. Not sure we're going to have a full house.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Hi.
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. All right, we're just waiting for Human and Bani to join. The session should open up to the audience in the next few minutes, so then people should start coming in. Yeah, good luck, and yeah, just give us a shout if you need any assistance.
Thanks.
Cool, thanks.
You're right. It's a bit of a weird slot. I think we're towards the end of the day. I'm not sure if it's more people or more exhausted people.
Yeah. I guess maybe a couple hotel people would have put it in their diary for this slot and will maybe come back for it, but let's see.
Yeah, exactly.
The second last session of the event.
We've all spoken at worse.
That's true.
But overall, do you think it's been successful?
Yeah, look, I mean, I haven't been. I've kind of come in and out and listened to a bit. I caught your session. Yeah, I think it's been good.
Yeah, I haven't had the chance. I've just been swamped.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of optimism from the sessions that I've heard, the few that I've listened to as well. There's hope, and everyone's just waiting to see how markets start to improve. But it sounds like a lot of projects that were in the pipeline. I mean, people are still sort of carrying on, tweaking them, but still carrying on with a key sector. The main focus seemed to be affordable housing through the day-to-day. So.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most resilient, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was a panelist on the bench thing a couple of weeks ago. I think that was a bit more nuanced, especially in our hospitality sector, right? I think that was a bit more realistic, to be honest. But I can understand why people just continuing on, because some of the financing covenants, would probably give you no choice but to finish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
I heard of one case out in the Far East where basically the financing covenants make sure that you have to actually open. So they're actually going to go through all the expense and burn of opening and then shut down a few days later.
Oh my.
What a waste.
What a pain.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's going to be interesting to see how things play out.
Particularly for us, I think from next week as the international flights resume.
Is it still set? There hasn't been a torpedo to that?
Not as yet.
Yeah.
Not as yet. We cross our fingers that there will not be one. But yeah, there's a lot of...
Came 3 days after opening.
Yeah.
Change their minds.
No, I think, that opportunity, the president has been very regular, in their things. They do things every 30 days. So if it was to be kiboshed, it would have been this week, not so we just need to wait and see.
Okay.
But geez, because of the alcohol ban, everybody's now been stocking up at home, right? Because now restaurants and other places can't do it. So I was talking to my supplier. I can't believe South Africa can't export wine. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Roman, how are you?
Hi guys, how are you? Okay, just making sure this is working. I'll be right back.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of saw it coming, but it still was surprising that it was like with immediate effect. I think people sort of thought, well, it's going to come, but they'll give us a day or two to a warning. but no, 8 o'clock one night. The next day, nothing was open. So
Crazy.
yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, but I don't get the logic of export. Why ban exports if somebody wants to, import it?
I know.
I mean,
No,
look at the number of jobs and everything.
Exactly. I mean, they don't have the capacity to deal with the nuance and think through these things. Unfortunately, they've had to sort of take more blanket approaches. But yeah, I mean, the export thing is crazy, particularly for the wine sector. I mean, they could have kept that sector alive with just exports. Would have been fine. I mean, but yeah, it's not tragic. But it also, the effect is pronounced. I mean, in terms of saving hospital beds, and I mean, there's an immediate drop of violent crime, accidents, and so. Whereas I'm not a smoker, but the ban on cigarettes, there's no real evidence that it's actually does anything,
Yeah, no, but that's just to help the cartels out there. We all know who's involved as well.
There we go.
Oh, geez, dear my.
But the cigarettes is also harder to ensure it's being adhered to, because if I had a stash in my house, I could just sit in my back porch.
Exactly.
And when it runs out, I'll just look for, black market. Yeah. That's a lot harder than liquor,
Hello?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, we can hear you, Drew.
Yeah, there was a politician, a group of politicians on camera, standing around in a circle, all smoking. It's like, did they have a stash 3 months ago that is still going, or is there's something else going on? I think, yeah, probably the latter.
Are they running behind?
No, we'll start in 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah, we're just waiting for Bunny, I think.
I think Wayne's back, I hope. He froze.
Now, all good?
Otherwise, how's it going, Herman?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. I was just had to rush to site and get back. So, they announced these holidays last minute, and
tell me about it.
Everything
I had a good catch up with. Hi, Bunny.
Hello. How's everyone?
Yeah, good, thank you.
All right, well, thank you.
Good, thank you. How are you?
Hello, Bunny.
Very well, thank you. Sam, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
100%, even if it's virtually. I'm not sure if Wayne and Samantha, can you see them on your side?
Yes.
I can see everyone.
Can see all.
It's just they seem to be frozen
Smiling
on my
faces.
screen.
Oh, it could be the internet on. I don't.
Maybe we should log out quickly and log back in again, or?
I'm getting everyone clearly. Can everyone get me? Okay.
I've also got everyone quite
Same
clear.
here.
I'm fine.
And
it's just
I've
you.
got Drew okay as well.
Oh, you can't. Okay, so let me log back because I can't see them. So it's going to be a horrible conversation if I can't see or hear them. So I'll come back in seconds. Okay.
Okay, sure. Might just be your view or how you've.
Thank you.
All good. Great. I don't know if there's an official kickoff, but 1 minute away, and I see there's a couple of people in the room.
Drew, you look like you're in Buckingham Palace or something.
Nope, just my home office. Thank you.
It looks very good. Wayne, you can start, I think.
Good idea. I was not sure if Kafir was going to come do a bit of an introduction, but great. So I'll kick things off. I see there are people listening. Welcome to all of you to our session that's going to cover the hotel sector in East Africa. I'm delighted to be joined by some friends and colleagues today. I've got from my left Samantha Muna, Director of Development for East Africa at Hilton, who of course have been in East Africa for many years and recently signed their 100th hotel in Africa. We've got Drew Pandit, CEO of Fedha Group, a Kenyan developer that's focused in Nairobi, and the owners of the executive residency by Bets Western in Nairobi, the Fedha Residences, as well as the Avani Suites Nairobi, which is under development. Human Esani, Director of New Developments for Green Hill Investments, who of course are the developers and owners of Tribe and Trademark Hotels at Village Market in Nairobi. And last but not least, we've got Bani Haddad, Managing Director of Aleph Hospitality, who's a third-party operator in Middle East and Africa, have been very active in East Africa in particular. I think got 7 hotels open and 1 underway, I understand. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Wayne Godwin. I lead JLL's hotel advisory business in Sub-Saharan Africa. JLL's a Fortune 500 firm with 90-odd thousand plus employees in 80 different countries. From a Sub-Saharan Africa point of view, we've got an office in Johannesburg and Nairobi, and naturally are very active in East Africa. And thus, I'm very familiar with my panelists, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves and touch on what their connection is with the hotel sector in the region. But before I do so, I was very pleased to see the mix that API had assembled. It had nothing to do with the introductions, but not just because of the individuals, but I think it's quite a diverse group, and we should get some quite different perspectives. We've got Dhruv and Human on the investment and development side, Sam on the side of the brand and operator, and Bunny, of course, on the side of a white label third-party operator. So hopefully we're not going to just have an echo chamber of the same view, and hopefully it should be a good, honest, and robust discussion on where we find ourselves, which, of course, is a very difficult place in many ways. I think we find ourselves looking to what the long-term fundamentals hold, and I think that that's important, but really it's a case of understanding where we are in the short term and recovery. I think it's been well documented just how impacted hospitality has been from COVID-19, probably the most impacted sector. And of course, when we talk about investment, and that's all very critical, but ultimately there's a bigger picture here of a lot of jobs and livelihoods that are at stake. And that investment is ultimately the fuel and lifeblood that supports that in that sector. So I think it is important for us to continue these discussions and have these honest dialogues and understand what that recovery looks like, because everyone on my panel today I know is hugely passionate and invested in seeing growth in the sector and particularly in East Africa. So without further ado, why can I ask Sam to maybe just introduce yourself and what your sort of connection is with the hospitality sector in East Africa is?
Thank you, Wayne. Rightly put, this is truly an unprecedented time in our industry. I don't think any one of us alive has ever faced anything like this, and it's got a global impact. You know, we're used to seeing cyclical dips in certain markets, but not global impact like we've seen. So we'll try and unpack how to get to the other end of this, and quite excited to be here. My background is in hospitality, 25 years in the industry. I am a Kenyan national, but I have experience here in Kenya, in Europe, and in the US. The last 3 years I've been working with Hilton, responsible for the expansion of their portfolio of brands across East Africa, spreading as far north as Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Eritrea. Thank you.
Go next.
Wayne, should I go ahead? Sorry, I didn't
Yes,
hear you.
please. Yes, please. Sorry. Yeah, please.
So my name is Human Hassani. I'm the Director of New Developments for the Green Hills Investment Group. It comprises of several investments into retail and hospitality. So the most known would be the Tribe Hotel in Nairobi. Its sister hotel, Trademark. So Tribe is a 137-room boutique 5-star property located in the diplomatic zone of Giyiri. And Trademark sits on the same complex. They both sit within the Village Market shopping mall complex. And Trademark is a 215-room 4-star hotel with quite large conferencing facilities, banqueting facilities, opened in 2018. And Tribe opened in 2008. Our group focuses on development, and we are also owner-operators. So we hotel properties and also operate the shopping center as well.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Bunny, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Bani Haddad from Aleph Hospitality. We are the hotel management company in the Middle East and Africa. They mentioned a presence in East Africa, Kenya, Zanzibar. We're also in West Africa, in a couple of countries, in Dubai. We're in specifically, we have a hotel in Nairobi and a couple of others under development outside of Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu. We operate the Best Western in Nairobi, and we have a pipeline with Marriott and other places. Some other brands. We obviously work with all of the brands. Really, our client is we we operate the hotel on behalf of the investor, irrespective of the brand, agnostic. Is a major benefit for hotel investors.
Fantastic. Dhruv, that leaves you.
Yeah, thanks. So a part of a family business with a diversified real estate portfolio. We do commercial, residential, a little bit of retail, and then on the hospitality side, you mentioned a couple of our properties, but we mainly play in fact, exclusively play in the apartment hotel side, which is basically the business model is more skewed towards long stay customers, and the margin pickup coming from short stays as well. And it's as you mentioned, 2 properties operating, still open, and 1 under development.
Great. Thank you all. Not sure where that echo is coming from, but Sam, starting with you. I mean, having started your career in the US and then returned to Kenya, you said almost a decade or so ago, I'd like to sort of Yeah, give us a bit of a feel for what's kind of changed over that period. What are sort of some of the key changes in East Africa in terms of the way investors are looking at the sector now versus then?
One of the things I quickly witnessed, about 10 years back when rejoining the East African market, was that there was a awakening to the fact that we hadn't had new supply in the market for quite a while. I think, and Human can talk to that, I think his Tribe Hotel was one of the first hotels opening in 2009, where we had had a period of no new hotel supply for a while. And that sort of set in motion the new development of hotels. So we quickly started to see, one or two hotels join the market every year. But I must say the most significant was now in the last 3 years, where we've seen the biggest increase so far. By my last count, and I could be wrong, would be about 13 or so hotels in the Nairobi market that have opened since the beginning of 2017. So that just shows how the market has shifted. But one of the things that we also have seen is a company like ours at Hilton. We have looked at this new awakening and have said, what can we do? And in 2017, we did a whole strategic focus of looking at sub-Saharan Africa. While we had been on the continent for at least 50 or 60 years, there was a reawakening of bringing more brands. So you find historically, we had the Hilton brand, which is our most prevalent brand across the region. But now we're starting to bring in other brands from our brand portfolio. Most exciting is actually that we just added 2 more hotels this year, Canopy by Hilton, one in Casablanca and one in South Africa. Both of them signed this month in July. And so we are seeing, a new brand like Canopy by Hilton starting to take root at the north and southern end of the continent. And pretty soon we're excited that we shall be seeing the same across the middle part of the continent, which is East Africa. So a lot of focus on growth, diversification of brands beyond just the capital markets, capital cities. We're going out also into regional markets. In Ethiopia, we actually have 3 regional hotels under construction. Tanzania is already very diversified for us, and we're looking at the key tourist markets in the northern Tanzania circuit, as well as Dar es Salaam and Zanzibar, where we have hotels already in operation. So we're now looking beyond just our main capital cities, Nairobi, Kampala, Dar es Salaam, and looking at the regional market. And we're quite excited to see what's going to come in the pipeline down the pipe.
Fantastic, good. And Dhruv, coming to you, you mentioned obviously more of a generalist from a real estate perspective and a long family history in the sector. But what sort of attracted you to hospitality, and what was it that sort of made the sector work for you?
Thanks, Wayne. I think for us about 4 or 5 years ago now, it became increasingly clear that the residential market, which is where we've traditionally played in, had actually gotten much more increasingly competitive. And from that point of view, we wanted to upgrade and really show a bit more TLC to our customers, if we can put it that way. And what very quickly became clear is that the real value play was not just being in a furnished, which was kind of a halfway value add, was to go the full hog and actually become a fully serviced apartment hotel. And so that's where we ended up with a franchise with Best Western, as well as it happens, executive residency, and really provide that the better service that the customer was looking for. Again, our customers are becoming more and more sophisticated, whether you look at them from international or locally, I think. The other play for us was more from a risk and return proposition, that which in a strange way has been borne out by recent events, and that was on a return per square meter basis. Perhaps it's much lower, but then the risk is much lower as well. Because we could we could stay open. And in fact, we did stay open with our long stay customers throughout this entire period. Frankly, worst comes to worst, we can actually sell off and generate equity through individual apartment sales, which you obviously can't do with a hotel. So that flexibility has a attractiveness for us. And lastly, I think is in a market where funding in shillings is extremely high. We had the opportunity of actually, rebalancing our funding with much cheaper foreign currency loans, and that actually has helped boost the return on our overall portfolio, if I can put it that way. So 2 or 3 reasons, which hopefully our business model makes sense and actually, is I think sustainable for the longer run, indeed.
And a trend, I guess, that we see more broadly across sub-Saharan Africa, with quite a lot of generalists playing in the sector, liking it because of the foreign currency aspect, liking it because of the diversification aspect, and liking it because of that single tenant profile and limited what that does from a risk point of view. Human, coming to you. Yeah, sorry.
Maybe it's a nice segue for Bani as well, but we're definitely not operators. So we rely on third-party operators, and those just didn't exist a few years ago. Now there's, when we started, there were perhaps 1 or 2 now, and then people like Bani who are multi-country have definitely come in. So, again, the market attractiveness and growth clearly shows.
Yeah, that is a good segue, and I think I will ask Bani that in terms of, clearly from a sub-Saharan Africa point of view, very, very low penetration from white label operators. I mean, in South Africa, we've had a couple over the years, and it's not something that's too new, but the rest of the continent is still very new. Whereas, for my colleagues in Europe and the US, that's just part and parcel. That is what how the sector works, particularly in the US. I mean, what drove you to it? Where did you sort of see the opportunity, and how do you sort of feel that you differentiate yourself from the brand managed properties?
Yeah, absolutely right. In the US, and hotel companies, they're massive. Some of them are actually, in terms of number of hotels they manage, Marriott and Hilton and all these big brands. In have had presence operationally to the assets, and maybe the main reason is that when 40 years started coming to the region, there was local expertise, whether it's in the Middle East or Africa, to franchise, but also brands and always the luxury a bit more difficult. Let's say Hilton or Hilton Garden Inn or Executive, so the combination is maturing, and given our experience, our personal experience, the realized that it was the time to investors, developers, which will generate higher profits, but also give them which with a human can give in terms of control, in terms of day-to-day engagement, involvement in the operation. Quickly, actually, we're We've started in Dubai, but we've been now 5 years into operations, and 90% of our portfolio and pipeline is in Africa. We've seen interest in Africa, and for a couple of reasons. Obviously, hotel developments in Africa, the rationale, I would say, is much more geared towards returns. Middle East, where it's more towards ego, but also the type of hotels in Africa are typically smaller in the number of rooms compared to so there's interest from brands to manage, say, 100-room hotel, and this is where we can actually developers, but we're actually also helping the brands expand their footprint and flags across the continent.
Absolutely, and I think just anecdotally seeing far more brands turning to partners like yourselves and being more open to it, and I think that's exactly it. It's about kind of growing their platform, doing what they do well in terms of the brand and distribution, and doing what you guys do well in terms of the feet on the ground and operating hotels.
Not sure if it's only me, but there's a massive delay.
Everyone else getting okay audio?
Yeah, we're fine.
I'm
Okay,
good.
Let's go to Human. Human, your two properties. I mean, clearly at the moment, and the sector and globally, and it's come under a lot of pressure. I mean, how are you managing this? How are you handling the impacts of COVID, and what is sort of your how are you pivoting and managing in these very difficult times?
Thanks, Wayne. So yeah, we Kenya was lucky. I think probably most of Africa was lucky in the sense that we did have some foresight. We saw the wave coming. So kind of getting those first cases in early March gave us about a month and a half where we at least had the opportunity, not that everybody did it, but we had the opportunity to plan ahead. When we saw that the world was going towards lockdown and isolation, we knew that would affect hospitality quite badly. So we made a decision to close Tribe early on and focus on renovations, which had commenced in January, actually in December, when we had commenced with renovations. But renovating a hotel that's operating is very difficult. So it was just better to close it. We had about 10, 15 guests. Yeah. We moved those to Trademark. Again, we were fortunate that the two properties are located in one complex, the two hotels. So we closed Tribe, have been fully focused on renovation, and we'll most likely open it by January. And it's allowed us to go flat out with that, which is quite good. On the side of Trademark, we've had numerous brainstorming sessions, and really we encourage the group to think outside of the box as much as possible. So we developed, one was, we started with the concept of a safe hotel, which was a hotel that, was for people that would be more susceptible, more at risk. We started moving in that direction very early on. The problem was being able to test tests were at that time were not open to kind of private organizations. It was all being done by the government. So that limited our ability to become a kind of isolation safe hotel. We then went with an idea of an urban retreat, which was, for these people who were stuck at home for 5-6 weeks, or, by that point, 2 months, to get out for a weekend within a small group, be able to dine. And so we sold it as a dinner package, but then you spend the night, and that did get some pickup. But it came down to our operations and our ability to sustain a good component of the staff. Actually, pretty much all of the staff are maintained within the hotel, so there isn't the risk of transport and transmission, and that allowed us to get some NGO business that's still coming into the country and has sustained at least a minimal, but probably better than most of the market, at about the 35 to 40% occupancy range. Throughout this period, sometimes we've gone up to about 80% when the quarantine sessions were in. But yeah, we're going to see how that might change over the next few weeks as the international flights come in, whether that will open up and get better or actually possibly dip.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and I think certainly better than most. Sam, it's coming back to you. I mean, obviously, Roman touched on a few things around Safe Hotel and what hotels are doing, both globally and regionally, in terms of hygiene and safety for travelers. As we sort of look to reopening now, I mean, what are some of the things that Hilton are putting in place regionally? And more importantly, kind of what is your sense on how owners across sub-Saharan Africa are adopting these things, these sort of global best practices?
So our number one priority during this period has been the protection and safety and the security of both the guests and team members. Now, we've seen a number of our hotels shut down, but being global, what it is we've got the ability to look and see the wave, across the different parts of the world. So where, we saw Asia Pacific region starting sort of to open up is when Europe, Middle East and Africa and the US were starting to sort of close down. And so we've seen these waves and green shoots that have come at different, every region's different. And again, each country is also different based on the protocols that they put in place. But for Hilton, we've developed an industry-leading cleanliness program called Hilton Clean Stay. This is in partnership with Reckitt Beckenstar, the makers of Dettol and Lysol. And that's being rolled out globally so that it's an assurance of safety and cleanliness, that both guests and team members have some level of confidence to come back to the hotels. And this program is being rolled out as different hotels open now. How the hotels open and which hotels open is completely dependent on local situation. Here in East Africa, we've seen, Tanzania has remained open throughout, so our properties there remain open and in operation. In Kenya, we had a mix of closed hotels and open hotels. Again, there's a lot that's being done with regards to the future of those individual hotels. But from our perspective in development, we've continued to work on other projects that we have in the pipeline. Got quite an active pipeline here in the East Africa region, in Ethiopia, here in Kenya. So we continue to work on those projects. Naturally, they've been impacted, they're going to be delayed. Some of the projects, are going to be pushed out half a year to a year. But we are still focused on getting all those projects that we have in the pipeline to continue moving forward and to reach the future opening date. Our focus has always been long-term as a hotel company, and our commitment is to our owners. So we're working hand in hand individually with the owners of the hotels to understand what plans and expectations they have, and then we implement those. But in the long term, we're aiming to see a majority of our hotels here in the continent open, and then it's a question of to start to understand how that's impacted. Next week we see Kenyan international flights reopening, as Human mentioned, and we're going to see how that pans out. I think the future is uncertain for all of us. But the key is to keep that communication between our team members, our guests, and our owners open so that we can together find solutions and find the best way to keep moving forward.
Good. The next question was for Drew. Has he dropped off? He seems to have dropped off once or twice. I guess I could equally ask it of any of my guests, and it's really around what Sam mentioned earlier around how the Nairobi hotel market has changed, and I guess the big story has been that supply side of the equation and the growth that we've seen there. The question, and I will still pose it to Drew, because he has a hotel that's under development, and in many ways that's a good place to be in the sector right now. is under development because you don't have the same impact. And certainly globally, we're seeing a lot of capital flowing into new developments in quite mature markets to purely avoid the direct COVID impact, where in the past, attracting capital into a new development is always a bit trickier because you've got that development period, which is pure cash flow out and very little in. So Drew, the question's really around from a supply point of view, and I could equally ask it to any of the guests. How do you think COVID, in both its economic consequence, the funding side of things, is really going to impact the pipeline of new hotels in Nairobi? I mean, it's a very healthy pipeline still. We spoke about what's come in the last 3 years. But just keen to hear if you feel there'd be less competition as a result of COVID or not.
So I think as you say, the pipeline had been very healthy, particularly in the Nairobi market. As a as a regional hub, but I think the pipeline was already slowing. I think the largest announcement recently, and you would know better, Wayne, was probably the JW Marriott from a number of keys point of view. And certain other projects were announced, and we hadn't seen construction started. I think where you haven't started construction, you probably are going to pause and see how the market develops. Where you're under construction, I think you take your time to open and really not rush for it because of the huge uncertainty that's out there, clearly. As to new announcements, I think investors will probably wait and see, and if they can find some properties that are already on the market in need for a refurb, perhaps pick them up at a more reasonable, shall we say, investment amount. I think that's where perhaps investors would be wise to pause rather than, as you say, take the development risk and look for a new build. I certainly think there's an opportunity out there if you can look beyond the election cycle and this short, medium-term cycle to see where you can perhaps even rebadge an existing property. It was a little early, but I think the Fairmont transaction, is particularly interesting for me. That it had been on the market for a while, but it changed hands, and I'm pretty sure that it's a very experienced, deep-pocketed, and certainly longer horizon type of investors, and that's what we need at the moment. Not a short-term view, certainly a bigger medium to long-term view. Yeah, that would be my sense. But will we see the big rush of last 2-3 years? Definitely not. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing something like that on transaction. Human, coming to you, and I think as we sort of start looking towards it, I mean, a lot's been made from a global point of view around kind of when travel is really going to recover. There's lots of theories being bandied about. Of course, a lot depends on things that are outside any of our foresight, vaccines, etc. And there's sort of projections more around 2022, 2023 from a global point of view. If we kind of take things closer to home and sub-Saharan Africa, and particularly East Africa, how do you think that's going to potentially differ, whether it's corporate or leisure? Do you think we're going to see a bit of a homogenous story from a recovery point of view, or a bit more dichotomous?
So my feeling is that we will see business travel pick up considerably faster than the leisure market. And we're already getting that sense from discussions with the online travel agents, bookers, the Expedias, Hotels.com, that there is significant interest coming in from March next year, and possibly some of that will filter into to the end of this year, depending on how these countries fare in terms of managing the situation. I'm concerned about the tourism product and how long that will take. But I think they've also realized that there's a bigger opportunity with them with the local market and the regional market. And so even if we stayed within a more of a regional play and attracted, I'm talking about Kenya specifically, but there's no reason that we can't have that same discussion of Kenyans going to Rwanda, Ugandans, going to coming to the Kenyan coast, where there's more regional marketing and interaction and appeal, rather than sitting and waiting for the international markets to open up. And I think that the tourism sector can pick up very well from that, and it's something that was needed, quite frankly. It was, there was this over-dependence on the Western markets and some of the Far Eastern markets, and I think it was time that we built up those regional, both the flights and the routes, and also the packages. So yes, I think business travel will be back on its feet. My feeling is that by the end or by the beginning of next year. Obviously not to the levels that we were at the beginning of this year, which were actually quite strong, but coming back, and I hope that at least regional tourism can support that recovery by mid next year.
Great, and maybe a follow-on question for Bani with that in mind, and then what that recovery might look like. I mean, how does that influence your strategy for East Africa, whether it's at a sort of country level or product level? I mean, where do you sort of see the opportunities for investors working with a white label operator like yourself?
We remain, as a relatively small growing company, we remain quite opportunistic. Our focus is actually more on the already operating assets, existing assets, rather than greenfield ones. There's obviously less appetite now from investors to develop new hotels. So the idea is to offer our services for existing hotels who probably locally managed, unbranded in the sense they don't have an international flag. So we're focusing on offering our services where we know and we have a track record in adding value for these owners and developers. That said, we have signed a couple of hotels recently, which are greenfield, and we continue to negotiate. But the opportunities, I think, just to pick up a little bit on what Homan said, is we're really interested. For example, if we look at Kenya, we're really interested in the coast. We think that the coast we feel that there might be opportunities. We're excited to reopen our resorts in Zanzibar. And all of this because of the regional demand and domestic demand, which will be generated. Being here in Dubai, we've seen how secondary emirates around Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, etc., are seeing a surge in business just by demand and staycations. And so we really feel that such demand and a new segment will benefit a lot our hotels in Africa and any hotels. But at the same time, in terms of travel, I remain quite optimistic. If you look at the various European countries since they reopened after lockdown, the people just went out. And I think as the countries are reopening, I think 2021 we're going to see people traveling again. They can't wait. But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, from a Hilton's perspective, I mean, obviously have been on the continent for a long time, and particularly in East Africa, active in the beach resort space, urban hotels, safari circuit. I mean, how do you kind of use that from a strategy point of view? And is it kind of you want to be in all those areas, and how do you kind of navigate that from an investor point of view?
Okay, let me start with the strategy part. So from a strategy perspective, one of my targets is to debunk the myth that we only need to be in capital cities. So we're actively looking at the regional market. Here in Kenya, we're looking at the county level. We're looking at the key tourist destinations. So that includes beach resorts, safari, mountain. So that's something that we're certainly looking at. In Tanzania, we're already at in Zanzibar, and we're in Dar es Salaam. So we're looking to grow that portfolio to sort of the Northern Tourism Circuit, like I mentioned earlier. And then in Uganda, want to try and sort of balance out being in Kampala and also being in Entebbe by the airport. And from a brand strategy perspective, we've got all our brands at different price points. So one of the things that we're seeing the fastest uptick on the African continent is our Hilton Garden Inn brand growth. And that's just a good mid-market brand that pretty much fits in all the areas I've talked about. Maybe not so much in Safari. I'll come back to that in a bit. But Hilton Garden Inn, and on the flip side, the Hampton by Hilton, we've looked at a couple of mixed use developments where those two brands sit very, very beautifully in this mixed use development portfolios, because they've got a very small footprint. It's very prototypical, so it's easy to fit it into a larger mixed use scheme. And we continue to see demand for that product grow even here in the East Africa region. We've got the other, collection brands, Curio Collection and Tapestry Collection, which also have legs to grow across the region. Curio Collection is actually well suited for our safari destinations, where you're trying to look for something that's unique, and it allows hotel developers develop their own unique hotel brand and hotel identity. And what we do is just come in and tag in the Curio Collection, but we market the hotel in its own unique identity. So it is not a cookie cutter or prototypical type of marketing. And that we've started to explore those opportunities. So from a regional perspective, we're looking at all the East African countries. We've got active discussions going on across, the different countries. And from a brand perspective, we're also trying to expand our brand portfolio beyond just what is traditionally known as the Hilton. So we find the Hilton flagship brand is very well known. It's institutionalized here in Kenya and in Ethiopia. Both hotels are 50 years old, but we want to see if we can grow the rest of the brands, Doubletree, Curio, Garden Inn, and Hampton by Hilton, just to name a few. What we don't really see growing much in East Africa is at the luxury segment. I think the luxury market outside of the islands, Seychelles, Mauritius, on mainland, the luxury segment is a pretty tough one to grow. It's got a very high development cost, and for where we like to position the ADRs for the luxury portfolio here in the sub-Saharan African market, you find it's very hard to make the numbers work from a return on investment perspective. But we've not taken it completely off the table. It's just one of the things that we tend to be very cautious going into.
For one, I'm certainly would echo that and kind of share your view on that. I mean, certainly some very good opportunities out there for it across sub-Saharan Africa, but in general, to make those high development costs work against the average room rates that you can get is very difficult. And I think if we look at sub-Saharan Africa as a whole and kind of look at where the sort of real fundamentals are from a travel, and we're seeing a rise in regional travel, local travel, and I think really where the bigger opportunity is for the continent is in that more mid-scale space. And I think a lot of the brands have recognized that. We're seeing a lot more interest from more institutional investors and private investors into that mid-scale space. So, and I think East Africa has in many ways led that charge. I think the sort of local owner community is pretty well versed and savvy in that regard. Many have done their first hotel development with a managed operator or possibly even a third-party operator, and are now looking to do regional rollouts, particularly in the mid-scale space, with a franchise brand or with a partner in that regard. So no, I think that's very interesting. I think the focus around the right product is pretty critical in East Africa at the moment. Drew, as a segue into that, I mean, you've kind of nailed your colors quite firmly to the extended stay option. I mean, Nairobi in particular is a surprisingly mature and established extended stay market, although it's quite informal in terms of a lot of the supply. So in a lot of gateway cities, we very few in sub-Saharan Africa, we'd find as many serviced apartments as we'd find in Nairobi, but certainly not very many as formal and as what you have. I mean, what has been the thesis for you in terms of entering that segment?
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. Again, I think tying a couple of pieces, and in fact, one of the audience questions, if I may, as well.
That was the audience question. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's why is it different? Is that it's really not limited in takers, as the question perhaps assumes. It is actually expanding what has always been there but not branded, and really taking advantage of what the brand brings, or what international brands bring to the party. In other words, and especially now, keeping a standard, especially in health and safety and all of those sorts of things, that you don't actually, what does brand bring is really you don't have to explain yourself. This is the services we provide, and et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of taken for granted, and you actually now getting to the real value proposition straight away. The other point actually comes through in terms of options and flexibility and contingency planning. I just want to sound a note of caution here. Yes, the recovery will come. Yes, I do believe that it will be more business related upfront, and we need to work harder, shall we say, for the leisure and tourism a little later, and staycations come somewhere in between. But I do think they'll be much more price sensitive, and for the main reason that whether it's regional or international, the frequency of flights are definitely going to be less, and I think even at that level, the fares are going to be higher than perhaps we expected. The $350 special from Dubai to Nairobi, which you could just pick up and not think too much about, which will just not happen again for a while. I think it's just not going to be possible. On the flip side, budgets are going to be constrained, and the question is increasingly going to happen that if you're going to be traveling, you're probably going to be traveling not just because of frequency, but for 2 or 3 days, because that one night that you wanted to come in for, you could probably now do on Zoom, let's say. So you're going to see the business mix change quite a bit. Definitely be more price sensitive. And back to your point, the focus has got to be really what is the brand offering compared to other brands. Because for the same number of dollars, you're going to try and really look for a better service scale, look for a better value opportunity, and perhaps even closer to the market that you want for 3 or 4 days. And that's coming back to the question. I think we are going to be with a bit more space available than most hotels. In fact, quite a bit more space. I think we personally will be playing more on the safety part of it, to say if you want to self-isolate for a week because overnight a certain route hasn't been available, or your flight has been cancelled, or a certain outbreak has happened and there's been more restrictions, we're certainly going to be looking to play to say, hey, you've got many more options than you would have perhaps in a traditional hotel. And that's where I think contingency planning availability plays on both sides, not just ours, but also on the customer side as well.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, thanks, Struve. And Human, coming to you I think a big part of what your success has probably been from a hospitality point of view has been that kind of real iconic mixed use precinct that you've been able to create. Is Human there? Oh, there. Sorry. How has that benefited you from a hospitality point of view, being part of a mixed-use precinct such as that, and how do you see that impacting possible future investment strategies that you would take into the hospitality sector?
It's had a massive impact, and it was the reason that we made the investment in the first place. We realized that there were no hotels in Nairobi that were attached to a retail node, and so although Tribe initially was envisaged as a very different property, it was meant to be a three-star bed and breakfast kind of 30-room investment, and morphed into something very different. But the appeal, which also came from our own sensitivities, from our own experiences, were, people enjoy being in a safe complex, and especially in a city or a country that you're not familiar with, having that ease of, walking out of the hotel, generally, weren't perceived as good value or good, having very good offerings. So being able to step out of the hotel and having 45 restaurants at your footstep, or in front of you, was massive value. And I think Trademark has gained even more from that, being built inside of the shopping mall. So it almost has a coffee style or a coffee shop style entrance. You wouldn't know. Most people don't even know it's a hotel reception. You walk in and, it's a retail outlet. More of a deconstructed hotel design. So, the conferencing and the restaurants are all separate components, but within one general space. It's worked very well in terms of the appeal to the client, the sense of safety and also options. And it's also allowed us to appeal to the retail side, where hotel restaurants typically weren't, again, that attractive, where we're seen as not offering great value or great food. For example, in the case of Harvest, which was the restaurant associated with Trademark, it feels like a standalone restaurant in the mall, and so that allowed it to get good amount of interest from just the general local market, and ranked it number 1, number 2 on TripAdvisor in best restaurants in the country, which normally wouldn't happen for a hotel restaurant. So we would like to continue investing either within this same kind of node, within attached to a retail area, or look for some other level of attraction rather than a standalone hotel in the future.
Good. I've got 2 questions here from Arthur. First one, is there potential for the hospitality sector in East Africa to tap into REITs? And secondly, what is sort of the impact on from hotel valuations in the short to medium term? I think as the valuer in the room, I'll take that one. Look, it's obviously a very difficult time. Hotels are valued on their income projections, and clearly that the crystal ball around that is very murky at the moment. And subsequently, the RICS have issued a material uncertainty clause for all valuations, and that really does speak to the magnitude of what the challenge is. But in saying that, I think there's still hotels still need to be valued. Valuers still need to be applying best practice, and there's been a lot of encouragement for valuers to not be working by themselves and actually talking far more with colleagues, and we're certainly trying to promote that. I think the big thing that's sort of going to impact where valuations shift is seeing a few transactions. We haven't really seen much transactional evidence, not just on hospitality, but other sectors as well, through directly in COVID. I think once we start to see some either distressed assets or semi-distressed assets come through the system, we might have a bit of a clearer indication on where values are going to shift. There's a lot of theories about it, and I can kind of talk for an hour on it. But let's just say I think it's not complete doom and gloom. I think there's a lot. There's still got to be substantial value for quality assets, and nothing kind of where the fundamentals haven't changed. The second one, maybe something a bit broader. I mean, the REIT, tapping into the REITs for capital. Of course, not too many REITs currently in East Africa. I'd be keen to get the thoughts on panelists. Certainly, from my perspective, having worked for Hospitality Property Fund, which is a specialist REIT in South Africa, I certainly see such as the East Africa region offering enough of a potential market to launch a REIT focused on hospitality alone, or a more agnostic REIT that has some hospitality exposure. Anyone else got any views on that? Good. Benny, coming to you, and I think just we spoke quite a bit about sort of different products and different where the sector's evolving. A lot of new interesting brands coming through, focus on extended stay. I mean, what are the sort of key things that you're looking to in terms of how the sector develops? I mean, where's the sort of focus from you from a product point of view, and what's kind of getting you excited?
It all depends on the markets, on the cities. One of the lessons we've learned recently, is the importance of the long stay market. And in one of our operating hotels, this segment did save us, actually. We saved the operation of the hotel, and generally speaking, Sub-Saharan Africa, the long stay or service stop is undersupplied with quality products. So these are the type of things which get us excited going forward. But we're generally excited into every new city, every new product we enter. We're not shy, we're not afraid typically of entering new cities, new markets with brands, especially if it's with brands. And currently we're looking also at the few portfolio deals in Sub-Saharan Africa. So we see a lot of opportunities, and again, one is the long stay. It's something we really want to develop, and two, the limited service and mid-scale remains very important in Africa, especially that the regional and domestic tourism will increase and will become even more important compared to even what it was pre-COVID.
Good, and I think that we're almost out of time, and I don't see any sort of further questions. But thanks to those that did share some questions. Are there any final comments from our panelists before we close things off?
Maybe just
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll just quickly go before the system kicks me out again, unfortunately. But it's just to say, I think we're going to be, as you rightly said, when you opened up, nobody really knows. So we're going to have to think on our feet. But in all the real estate sectors that we deal with, I think hospitality people are used to thinking on their feet. So it's, for me, it's actually taking those lessons of pivoting very quickly into all the other real estate sectors that I deal with. That's been fascinating. So I think what we're just going to have to do as hoteliers, what we always do, is think on our feet, look after the customer, and I think we'll be fine. It's going to be a lot more bumpy than we think, probably. But if we think and we're resilient, I think we'll come back quicker and look after our staff and our customers. That's the most important thing. Yeah, thank you. And thanks, panelists.
It's a very good point that Drew brings up, which is that, in probably Europe and North America, they're not used to having these systemic shocks every 3 or 4 years, sometimes even every 2 years, which parts of Africa, certainly Kenya, have witnessed, whether terror-related, other pandemics, election, political violence issues. We've been dealing with it for 30 years, and we've almost, to some degree, if we haven't, we should certainly be building it into our models, to expect the unforeseen challenges that might come up. So on one hand, that means that we should be more adaptable and resilient moving forward, and even in dealing with this, that it's not the end of the world in terms of our investment. It's something that we have to manage. What would be helpful is just making sure that the government also has a policy of responding, that they're not surprised by any kind of shock to the system, that they have solutions in place so that they can pull out a manual and say, let's refer to this in the playbook on how to deal with whatever situation it is to get everything back again, and not have to rebuild from scratch. I think that would be the most helpful moving forward, the most important lesson.
And I echo what Dhruv and Human both said. I think this is an industry that one has to take a longer term view and be able to just withstand the shocks. Now, this was a bigger shock than any of us imagined, but I think if we stay hunkered down, we put safety of guests and team members at the forefront. And for us as Hilton, we keep the conversation going with all our individual owners. We'll continue to put one foot in front of the other. And in due time, I think we'll come out on the other end and we'll be having a different conversation some years down the line.
Absolutely. Great. I really want to thank my guests today. I really want to thank everyone who's joined and listened. I think these conversations are very important at this time. It is a very difficult time for the sector, and let's keep in mind everyone who's impacted by job losses, furloughs, etc. in our industry, and I think really work together to try get that recovery going as soon as possible. So thank you, a big thank you to API for putting this on the agenda. I think it's always great that you support the hospitality sector as much as you do, and look forward to seeing everyone in person. Hopefully these virtual sessions are not, we can replace them for something in person next year. Good. Thanks everyone, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good one.
Cheers everyone.